Here we go.
Welcome to the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of theepicreview.com, where we are never afraid to inject ourselves with the extremists in order to party like it's 1999. Joining me today is
Jerry Reed, also known as Barbecue 17.
as well as,
Gina Wiltshire, also known as Gina Beaner.
and we have a very special guest with us today.
Andrew Stokes, also known as Andrew Stokes.
And of course, I am the real Brad Bell. Alright guys, let's just get right into it. Biggest movie of the summer. Know what we have been checking out this week. No epic news. This entire podcast is dedicated to Shane Black's Phase 2 jump-starting Iron Man 3.
Ladies, children, sheep. Some people call me a terrorist. I consider myself a teacher. Lesson number 1. Heroes. There is no such thing.
That was from the trailer for Shane Black's Iron Man 3. I'm just going to go ahead and sit this one up for us since I'm the residential Marvel fanboy. Usually Jerry sets films up for us. This film starts out in a very beautiful way with the classic 1999 song Blue playing, and we see Tony Stark meeting scientist Maya Hansen at a conference in Switzerland where they encounter AIM scientist Aldrich Killian, played by Guy Pearce. He has an idea he wants Tony to check out. Maya's working on this serum that will become the Extremis, which will be self-healing, which will ultimately lead to the people becoming super soldiers if they inject themselves with it formula. She's having a hard time trying to crack the code. After a one-night stand with Tony Stark, he writes it down on the back of a name tag, the formula that she will go on to create the Extremis serum. While all this is going on, we realize that Tony is kind of having these paranoid attacks, panic attacks from the events that happened in Joss Whedon's Avengers when he had to take the nuclear bomb into the wormhole. He is also trying to deal with these panic attacks. He's trying to maintain his relationship with Pepper Potts and maybe even take it to the next level. He is trying to continue being Iron Man and take that in new directions by controlling the armor mentally with a new kind of artificial intelligence device that he's injecting himself with. And while all this is happening, a new president has just been elected to kind of give America a stronger backbone to deal with the now super terrorist, the Mandarin, played by Ben Kingsley, who is kind of rising in the background and looks like he will be Tony Stark's most formidable foe yet. So that pretty much sets the film up. Let's get our initial reactions. Of course, all this is non-spoiler. Jerry, give us your initial reaction.
Okay. My initial reaction is I liked the movie. It had some really good parts to it. I thought the first half was stronger than the second half, but I guess I usually tend to think that about most movies. This movie was not as much fun as the previous two Iron Man movies.
A different tone, for sure.
Yeah, it's a very different tone. It's a lot darker of a movie. It's a lot more of a Tony Stark movie than it is an Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
And although, that all kind of comes together at the end, I guess one of the things initially I thought of as I left this movie was, we know that, Jon Favreau, didn't he not want to do this movie because they said he had to tie everything into Avengers?
Yes, he was kind of burnt out after Iron Man 2 because they kind of shoved all the Nick Fury Avengers stuff.
I was shocked that this movie has truly so few references to the Avengers in terms of there's the plot element of him having, the maybe PTSD or the panic attacks.
And that's a major part in the first half of the film.
It is a major part. But other than that, there just really weren't that many tie-ins to the Avengers or to the Marvel shared universe.
Yes, it was a very almost kind of a standalone Iron Man story, kind of a true, felt like an end of a trilogy type film.
Yeah, very much so.
Even though Shane Black was kind of coming in to wrap up this Jon Favreau Iron Man story that he had launched in 1 and 2. Gina, what about your initial reaction?
I walked away from the theater absolutely loving this film. I think I actually enjoyed it more than you two, you three, said that you did.
Andrew's never here. So. Andrew, have you ever heard of the Epic Review before?
No, I didn't even know we were recording. I actually thought we were playing video games.
Okay.
But yeah, I went into this film having a certain set of expectations, and within the first 30 minutes of the film, all those expectations I realized were kind of incorrect assumptions of what the film was actually going to be about. So I ended up throwing all my expectations out the window and said, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is, what I'm seeing right here and right now. And I really loved it. I thought it was a great movie.
Gina, you talk about expectations. Are we kind of at a consensus here among the four of us that this was our most anticipated movie of the summer? I know Jerry's is Pacific Rim.
And my second is Man of Steel.
Okay.
This was my...
This is your third,
so at
right?
least
Third.
top three.
Yeah, top three.
This was my most anticipated movie, and not only the summer, the year. I know it was Gina's most
It was my
anticipated
top one, yeah.
one of the summer. What about you, Andrew?
I'm probably anticipating Star Trek Into Darkness more. But, I mean, it's within my top grouping of movies. I'm just really looking forward to this movie.
And you, like a lot of people, are very invested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably... It's good to have another Marvel fanboy
Marvel Zombie.
on this podcast. So, Andrew, just give us your initial reactions, just non-spoiler.
My initial reactions were to watch where I was standing. The floor was wet.
That's very true.
When I sat down, the seats were pretty comfy. Then there was an opening commercial that made my ears bleed.
It was really
It
loud
was
really
at first.
I had to plug my ears. It was hurting.
But the movie I thought was great. Going in, I didn't really have too much expectations. I don't know who the Mandarin is. I try to avoid... I mean, I knew who he was, but I try to avoid...
You'll never see him.
I try to avoid any comics that have to do with, magic and stuff. That's just... To me, it's one of my least favorite things in comic books.
So he hates Doctor Strange. You know?
Where we're
I
looking,
really don't. I mean, I avoid Doctor Strange. I mean, it's just, that's not my thing, you know?
where if you look over at the figure shelf I have there, it's
Yeah,
all the
it's
magical
all
characters.
magical.
And
Yeah.
Jerry's a huge Justice League Dark, so
Yeah.
he's more the magical characters in the DC universe. But you, at the same time, you are an Iron Man fan. You know, I know Spider-Man's your guy,
Oh,
but
yeah.
still, you are a huge Iron Man fan.
I thought it was a good movie. I mean, number 2 I thought was a mess. I was surprised to hear that Barbecue over here, that's his favorite Iron Man.
Man, I love number 2.
It was very entertaining, but I think Iron
Exactly.
Man 1 was definitely a better film. I thought number 1 was very entertaining as well. I don't think I like this one as much as number 1, but I still think it's a pretty great film.
Alright, I was looking forward to this movie the most. I'm probably the biggest... Iron Man's my third favorite superhero of all time.
He actually grew a goatee. So
No, I did have an Arc Reactor light up T-shirt for this film. I did
He
not
did.
have
And
the
He
you
did
got,
have
you
that.
got complimented on it,
Yeah,
too.
complimented because I had it in the dark glowing. It wasn't glowing annoyingly, by the way. But
You got no numbers, though.
no, I was super pumped for this film. I'm a huge fan of the Extremist storyline by Warren Ellis. The Mandarin has become, and I say become because I didn't know until probably around 2006 who the Mandarin was, and as I read
Until 2013, Brad didn't know how to pronounce it either.
Yeah, exactly.
Very true.
I was calling the Mandarin for about 8 years. So Jerry corrected me when we started this podcast.
Actually, the guy at the Chinese restaurant corrected you when you asked for Mandarin oranges. Yeah.
But it was called the
That's a
Mandarin.
Mandarin chicken.
He truly is one of the best villains in the Marvel universe. And one of your complaints about these characters outside of Batman and Spider-Man is they don't have the greatest rogues gallery of villains.
Mm-hmm.
But the Mandarin is definitely on par with some of the other great villains in the Marvel universe. But I was extremely anticipating it. Obviously, we're coming off of Avengers. We're pumped. The first film, I will say, is one of probably the best superhero origin story besides Batman Begins.
I agree.
Maybe
Yeah.
just as good. I mean, it's right on par with Batman Begins.
I don't know. I love Batman Begins.
I do too, but everybody in that film, the Jon Favreau, the first one, everybody fires on every cylinder. They are those characters.
Yep.
There are a few nitpicks, but God, that is a real tight film. And the second film, it's Jerry's favorite of the trilogy.
I love it.
But Andrew and I have talked about this, that the first hour of that film is probably that's probably my favorite part of the entire trilogy. I mean, you could not set up that movie any better.
Whiplash is a villain version of Tony Stark. He's like the anti-Tony Stark almost. He's what Tony Stark could have been.
Yeah.
In another reality.
A different place,
And
a different time.
so after those two and the Avengers, we get to this. But even over the course of those two Iron Man movies and the Avengers, I never felt that Tony Stark's was pushed to become what he is as a man in the comics, to become that man on the screen. And Tony Stark in the comics does crack those one-liners, and he does get those girls and stuff. But he has this greater sense of purpose that he kind of almost bears him along with probably Captain America bear the responsibility of the Marvel Universe on their shoulders.
Mm.
And I wanted to see Tony Stark push to that at a character level in the films, and I'm waiting, and definitely from the previews and the marketing, I thought that this would be the film to do it. And I think for the most part, probably the greatest accomplishment of this film is it does push Tony Stark to that place, to become not only the hero that we know he can be, but the man that we know he can be. I loved how this film was set up. It was definitely a different tone. This was, like Jerry said, are we going to see Tony? He becomes a hero outside of the armor.
Yeah, the whole that's kind of a big theme of the movie. Is it really? And it was a question. There's that one line in Avengers that Captain America said, let's see how
take away the suit. Who are you?
Yeah, and he has that little quip. But
millionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Yeah, cool story. But in this film, it's really about who is Iron Man. Is it the suit that makes the man, or the man that makes the suits? I mean, he makes the suits literally. But.
That's the best way to put it.
Mechanic.
And just
and he goes by that in the movie. He goes by
like
the mechanic at one point, which makes sense that he has to rely on the same intellect that built the suit in the cave.
Yes.
In the first Iron Man.
And Kevin Feige, head of Marvel Studios, had said on multiple occasions, we want to get Tony back to the mindset of being in the cave. Yeah. Break him down to that point. And I think they did.
Did you notice he met the scientist?
Yes.
That was in the cave at the party at the beginning of the movie.
I mean, the way this is Jensen was in the cave. Remember, Jensen references in Iron Man 1 that I met you at a conference. And then this was that conference. So
clever girl.
There was a lot of nods to that.
Is that a Jurassic Park reference?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
I love how it was set up at the beginning. It opens up with the 1990s hit Blue playing in the background, and they are literally partying like it's 1999.
Well, it's Y2K.
It's about to hit Y2K. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He meets Maya Hansen at this conference, just the way he does.
Hogan's got the mullet.
Yeah.
Very similar to the way he meets her in the Extremist storyline, and it's just set up well from the get-go. You almost feel bad for Guy Pearce's character, who is a cripple, who he wants to work with Tony Stark, I guess, on a kind of version of the Extremists as well. And Tony Stark's like, no, I don't have time for you, and he leaves him. He's supposed to meet him on a rooftop. And he leaves him on that rooftop.
I don't think he ever intended
to.
Yeah, he just told him to go on the rooftop.
He told him he would meet him, but yeah, you're right.
Being the ultimate jerk.
He never intended to. And I want to talk a little bit about, before we get to spoilers, Shane Black directing this movie. It was a very Shane Black movie. He wrote, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He and Robert Downey Jr. is in that with Val Kilmer. It was the first movie that Downey did before Iron Man, kind of coming back, trying to get post-drug addiction.
Yeah.
And it's set at Christmas. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is a lot of Shane Black's work is set at Christmas, and this movie was set at Christmas.
I was
It was set at Christmas.
That kind of threw me a little. I was like, I don't know.
It's no Die Hard.
A lot of people have commented that the darkness of everything that's happening to him is sort of
juxtaposed
against the light of Christmas and the Christmas trees and the celebration of everything versus his personal.
It's just not very often that we see Christmas movies, which it's not a Christmas movie, but it's set in Christmas.
Well, yeah, I mean,
for a big summer blockbuster.
in May.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Shane
not even
Black,
like
so let's
July.
The Lethal Weapon.
Yeah,
is
Lethal Weapon movies are the first two are set at Christmas. Kiss Kiss Bang
When
Bang.
did they come out?
Lethal Weapon. They all came out in the summer. They were big summer. And
Die Hard.
Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Superhero movie came out in June. Was set. That was a really Christmassy movie.
Yeah, very much so. One of my favorite Christmas movies, actually.
So I think it's kind of cool to see that. I've been wanting another superhero movie set at Christmas, but aside from that's a personal want of mine that I got. Early Christmas gift.
I want one set during the Olympics.
It might happen. But plus Shane Black turns this almost into Tony Stark unraveling this mystery of the Mandarin murders, unraveling the mystery of the extremist element and the extremist terrorist attacks. And I thought that was a way to it was a really neat way to see Tony Stark handle stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Stark's not as much of a detective character as, say, Batman, but he still does uncover these the extremists. If you read the extremist comic, he unravels the mystery of the extremists, and there's several twists in there that are also in the movie. But we talked a little bit about Shane Black. Let's talk about some of the individual performances in this film and where they compared to previous films. One I really want to get your guys' opinion on is War Machine. Colonel Rhodes, played by
Don Cheadle.
Iron Patriot, played by Don Cheadle. He's a big part of the marketing.
War Machine rocks with X's.
If you look at the flashback, Terrence Howard played him in the flashback. No, I'm just kidding.
That was really
That
awkward.
doesn't happen.
But they actually took the character of the Iron Patriot, which was a pretty big character in the comics. Norman Osborn was the Iron Patriot. And they just said, let's just make it a paint job for War Machine in this film. That kind of irked me a little bit at first, but I was like, whatever.
Well, I mean, we didn't really expect Norman Osborn to be in the movie.
No, nobody did, but I'm saying it was just kind of there to kind of give us a updated look at War Machine. I'll admit it looked pretty badass.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great look.
It looked awesome.
But what about, I didn't really feel like Don Cheadle, the War Machine character, the Iron Patriot character, played a big role in this film.
Because he didn't play a big
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, Rhodes didn't seem to have as big of a role in the movie
as he did the first two films.
Well, because
he's off doing his thing.
Yeah, that's okay. His focus of the film isn't on the two guys kicking butt. It's on Tony Stark, and so I think he had an appropriate amount of time, as his best friend.
About the last 45 minutes of the movie.
One thing
I think he had a lot of time to shine.
I really enjoyed we got to see Rhodey kind of just kick ass outside of the War Machine suit.
Yeah.
We got to see why he is this kind of awesome military guy and just kind of take people down, and he really is a physical hero outside of the
One of my
armor.
favorite parts is when Rhodey and Stark are outside of their suits and they're going through a compound. And,
I like that part too.
And Rhodey's like, okay, be on my 12, and he's telling them all these technical marksman things, and Tony's like, oh, okay.
It kind of reminded me of the scene at the end of Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
Were you about to say that, Andrew?
No, I was going to say, he said be on the 6, because being on the 12 would mean
be
Yeah,
on the 6.
Sorry.
6 and high.
Well, it kind of reminded me of the scene in Iron Man 2 when they're about to fight Whiplash
the
at the very
drones.
end,
Yeah,
and the hammer drones, and they're working together. But this time we get to see them be in that situation outside of their armor. So it was a pretty neat
funny.
thing to say.
Yeah.
And I say that Rhodey's character didn't play a huge part, but the concept of the Iron Patriot, of this new kind
was
of
pretty prominent.
yes.
Yeah, and I was going to say, the Iron Patriot, I know people going into it had problems with it. It's not Norman Osborn, that kind of stuff. I think it makes very much sense, because War Machine, like they said in the film, War Machine isn't, family friendly. You know what I mean? He's supposed to be an agent of the U.S. And having this tied into Avengers, and Captain America is now a reenacted part, you know what I mean, of the government, and Iron Patriot really matches that same theme. I think it makes a lot of sense when you mix in that Avengers and Captain America are part of our governmental force in this universe.
And I never really had a problem with it not being Norman Osborn, because due to licensing rights, we're never going to see Norman Osborn in one of those suits.
Right.
Sure. So, I mean, that wasn't a big issue. As far as Tony Stark, I mean, by this point, Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark.
Yeah.
He was great. We can't really say much about that. He was epic as that character. He always is. And we already said it pushed him to kind of be a hero outside the suit. Gina, how about Pepper Potts, a.k.a. Gwyneth Paltrow, a.k.a. the most beautiful woman in the world, voted by, I believe it was People magazine. How did you feel? I believe she's a very strong female character, but how did you feel about her and the relationship of her and Tony Stark kind of going to the next level?
Well, are you asking me as an individual, or do you want my token female response?
He wants to know if you hate
Either
He
one.
wants to know if you hate her because she's beautiful.
Am I talking for all womankind here, or?
Yes, that's why we have you on the podcast. You're the voice of all womankind on the Epic Review.
All of women.
Okay. So,
based on, women tribes people in Africa, what do you think of Gwyneth Paltrow?
I liked her performance. I thought she was very strong. But once again, as a female, I can't really say much about her until we get into spoilers, because I have a lot to say about her character in spoilers.
Okay.
Female spoilers.
And on that note, there's a lot to say about a lot of characters, spoiler related.
Like Guy Pearce is a good
Guy
one.
Pearce, Mandarin as well. Stuff we need to cover in spoilers. So let's go ahead and roll the reel forward to spoilers. Alright, just to kind of set the second half of the film up, spoiler field here. The biggest spoiler of the entire film happens, I would say, maybe like an hour 15 minutes into the film, where we find out that
Mandarin is Tony's father.
No, Mandarin isn't Tony's father. We find out that actually Mandarin is a guy named Trevor Slattery, who Guy Pearce's character, Killian, has hired to be this kind of Osama bin Laden like super terrorist. So all the build up in the marketing, all the amazing, fantastic build up in the first half of the film is basically a ploy to throw people off of the scent of the true Mandarin, Guy Pearce.
He's an actor. You missed that part. He's actually not a terrorist.
He's an actor, Trevor Slattery.
He's not any sort of terrorist at all. He is a bum, basically playing this character on TV.
When Tony finally learns, who the Mandarin is, he's invaded this.
This is when he invaded the compound.
Yeah, this mansion in Miami.
Yeah.
Where the Mandarin has been broadcasting from, and I mean the whole movie we've seen the Mandarin. They talk about how he's an enigma. I mean he kind of has an American accent. But
they say an accent of a Baptist preacher.
Okay, they say
he talks like a Baptist preacher.
And he has all this imagery of he looks Asian in some of his garb. I mean his clothes has an Asian flair.
I think they're trying to pass him off for Pakistani though.
He looks Middle Eastern as far as facial features, beard. He's dressed Asian as far as his costume.
He uses South American tactics. His videos are very reminiscent of like the Al Qaeda videos,
like Osama bin Laden taking credit for 9/11.
And so Tony goes into this compound and finds not the Mandarin, but Ben Kingsley playing Trevor. He's an actor. He's got a couple girls and he's in bed.
Very heavy British accent.
Yeah, he's drunk.
To make the listeners truly appreciate this twist that it takes, you have to remember that. At this point, the Mandarin has supposedly carried out this terrorist attack at the Chinese Theater in New York, where he is pretty much multiple ones, but the important one is the one that
we experienced firsthand.
That hurts Jon Favreau's character, Happy Hogan, who is a close personal friend of Tony Stark, and tells Tony Stark, this is when Tony Stark finally says, "Hey, I'm taking the Mandarin fight into my own hands. I'm not relying on the Iron Patriot. I'm not relying on the U.S. government.
Yeah,
even
this
to
isn't
the
politics. This is pure unadulterated
Revenge.
revenge.
which is what he says as he walks out of the Happy Hogan's hospital and basically challenges the Mandarin to attack him at his house.
Yeah, it gives him his address and
Exactly. So, and let's talk about that scene.
Awesome.
That probably one of the most powerful scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
Andrew, your thoughts on that powerful scene?
It was awesome. I really liked it.
it was very powerful.
Yeah, probably out of all the scenes in the movie, probably the most powerful of them.
Yes,
Really?
and
And I like the scene. I'm not sure it's my favorite scene. Honestly.
it's not my favorite scene. No.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really cool. It's a scene we've seen a lot in trailers and TV
Yeah.
spots and stuff. But we didn't quite know, I guess, why he's being attacked and stuff. And it was just, I was surprised a little bit as to how unprepared he seemed to be
Yeah.
for that kind of thing. But
Well, I will say, I think the most powerful moment in that scene, the house attack scene, was when he puts the suit on Pepper.
Yes.
With his mind, that's showing
Which-
that, hey, I could care less what happens to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to protect the love of
Yeah.
my life.
And that
Yeah.
definitely shows
The growth.
the growth of Tony's character in a very powerful way. That was one of the spoilers I had seen early on, which I don't know if it's really a spoiler, but there is a Lego set that is like the Mandarin assaults Tony's house, and it has Pepper in the armor with it.
Which
Mm.
was that was kind of a cool because you get to see he's bailed Pepper out of trouble so many
Yeah.
times, but she bails him out, and then while
Multiple
this is
times.
going on, he takes on the suit. He gets the suit back after Pepper's in safety is made it to safety, and he goes and he takes the terrorists who are attacking his house out. Andrew, and you said this
Yeah.
is one of your favorite scenes, I believe, where he was like, "That's one,
Yeah.
that's two, that's three."
yeah, his weapons weren't working. He had to, you had to quick thinking, find other ways to take these guys out. It was pretty cool.
And when he actually goes to the bottom of the coast of California with his home and gets stuck, and he uses a very brilliant tactic where he's able to control the armor with his mind at this point, where his hand comes
Yeah.
off and pulls him out. I thought that was
Actually,
a
I
very
think that
cool
was Jarvis.
scene.
I
That is
think
more-
I
Jarvis
thought
was the
Jarvis
one that...
was actually doing it because he
Yeah.
said, "Take a deep breath." Your Jarvis said, "Take a deep breath."
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
Jarvis is the one who
Unless he
rescues them.
programmed in Jarvis to warn him, I don't know. Before I do this, tell me to take a deep breath because I'm drunk and won't remember.
That's true. Maybe
Which
it
is
was
possible as well.
he wasn't drunk at this point in the
No.
film. But then after all this happens, before he gets to that compound, we see a section of the movie that maybe this is where Tony's character growth really takes place. The time he spends with the young boy.
That was my absolute favorite part of the movie. Was that
in
whole
Tennessee.
time. That whole time in
Tennessee.
Tennessee. They're back and forth. I almost felt like I was looking at the child version of Tony, Stark.
Yeah.
And they were very, very similar, and they definitely like went toe to toe a lot. But you almost saw this kind of parental feelings come out in him, wanting to take care of this kid. And
He's played by Ty Simpkins. I can't remember his actual name in the film off the top of my head. But
Child number one.
the reason Tony is in Tennessee in the first place is he's kind of starting to investigate. This is where the first extremist terrorist attack has taken place.
Which
Well,
at
it
this
wasn't
point in
extreme.
time,
it
we
wasn't-
don't know it was extremist. It was.
Well, yeah, but it
But he
wasn't.
doesn't
It wasn't.
know.
He connected to himself. I don't
Yeah.
believe that the news or whatever had connected.
They
him.
thought
No.
it
It
was
was
just a
man-
former soldier.
Yeah.
Oh
being
yeah,
a
who
suicide
made a
bomber.
bomb. Yeah,
right.
and
So
then
he
blew
connected
himself
the
up.
dots there using the magic of
And a very powerful
technology and
scene.
CGI and all that stuff.
Andrew, talk
No,
about
it was
that
before
nitpick
Shadows.
while he was unraveling this mystery to where he find this takes place before the attack on the house. This is how Tennessee gets on his radar.
Right. He looked at the crime scene and found the evidence at the crime scene.
How did he look at the crime scene?
well,
Much to your chagrin.
That's what magical technology and CGI.
He pulled everything up and created like a 3D version of the crime scene.
That
where
he could walk through.
Yeah, he could walk
Yeah.
through and manipulate.
You could even read the name on dog tags by zooming in with
It
those
was a lot.
computers.
It was reminiscent to where he kind of had the outline of the Stark World Fair in the second film. And was
Right.
able to
The
create
elements.
a new
Yeah.
element.
Yeah.
So I believe if he can create a new element, he can kind of solve a crime scene.
Starkium.
But,
Yeah, I
But
mean,
the reason, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that big a deal. I like to point out anytime there's characters interact with a bunch of CGI like that. But then,
So that's one of your favorite scenes of Prometheus.
I was saying, I love Avatar, so, there's plenty of CGI in that.
That's all that movie is.
Yeah, I know. So, but yeah, I like to pick at it because when technology starts getting used in these fantastical ways, it can bug me a little bit. But I mean,
Like a guy using a suit of armor.
it makes a little more sense than, I don't know, than just, pull up, where Happy Hogan's lying on the ground and all this stuff. Like, who took a picture of Happy Hogan before the ambulance moved him and that kind of
satellite.
stuff?
It was satellite rendering.
Nah.
That's what he said.
Yes, he did say that.
But Gina, you love the stuff with Ty Simpkins' character, the little boy, and it was definitely a good. You brought it up. It was a reflection. He saw the child version of Tony Stark in Ty Simpkins.
And like one of my favorite parts is like he says, "Okay, what's his name?" And the kid's like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "The bully who's beating you up at school. What's his name?" Like he identified with this young boy. He knew what this boy was going through. Obviously, this little child is brilliant, and he recognizes that in him. And so I think he sees a version of himself. He's saying this kid is a lot like me, and he's experiencing a lot of the things that I did. And
he's a smart kid. That's definitely
very
implied.
smart.
He said the thing about smart kids, they always cover their ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
and he helps him to do that with some bullies.
Yeah, and so that's where that parental sort of feelings start coming out, and they have this really kind of almost loving sort of interaction at the crime scene, at the explosion scene, where Tony goes into a panic attack. And the kid is concerned about him. And he's like, just take deep breaths. Do I need to get you a plastic bag?
Yeah.
And you can tell Ty has almost, he looks at Tony as a father figure because his dad had walked out on him. So.
Yeah, and he even says, are you going to walk out on me too?
Yeah.
And
I think, like, if you had said before we even saw Iron Man 1 that by the time the third movie comes around, he's going to have like a child sidekick basically to kind of help him out, you'd be like, oh my god, this is going to be horrible. Typical, third movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's done really well. The kid isn't a sidekick. He almost feels like a partner. That might be a little cheesy to say, but I mean, there was
not
a nice
just
little
a friend, a partner.
Yeah, there was back and forth between them. I thought it was really well done. And
I thought so too.
And the kid wasn't thrown in just to have a kid in there.
A lot of people feel that way, though.
He wasn't in the whole... I mean, they could have had an older person, but I think it meant more having this kid, this little innocent, this person with innocence. And,
who he wasn't experienced these attacks in his hometown.
And he wasn't he wasn't in the whole movie. It's not like they show up and like, oh, here's your nephew, Tony. Like, here you go.
I'm Incrediboy. You're not affiliated with me.
But basically, he helps Tony. Ty Simpkins' character helps Tony Stark get back on his feet to the point to where he has found where the Mandarin is at, and that gets us to the biggest reveal spoiler of the entire film, which we kind of backtracked, and now we're back at. But this is the most controversial part.
Turns out that Pepper Potts was Iron Man all along.
Yes. No. It turns out that Guy Pearce is actually the Mandarin the whole time, and Trevor Slattery, as mentioned earlier, played by Sir Ben Kingsley, is playing an actor of the Mandarin.
He's kind of the Mandarin. He's the head villain. The Mandarin isn't really a person.
The Mandarin is a creation.
Exactly.
That gets everybody rallying behind. They see this terrorist, this person with all this, foreign symbolism and imagery, who becomes like a face for evil that everybody can go after.
I agree with you and Andrew, but the thing is, I believe that it was Shane Black's intention. At first, I didn't believe this. I thought that, that Guy Pearce was the idea of the Mandarin. Mm-hmm. But I believe it was Shane Black's intention. He wrote and directed this film, by the way.
Yeah.
That, Guy Pearce's character, Aldrich Killian, really is the Mandarin. Because when he takes his shirt off, he has the dragon
He does have the tattoos.
And all that.
And that could be.
Almost to the same effect as we've had this conversation as the switch in Batman Begins, where Ken Watanabe is Watanabe. All right, Ken Watanabe isn't Ra's al Ghul like you think he is the entire film. It is indeed Henry Ducard, Liam Neeson's character, is Ra's al Ghul, and so that concept has worked, and I know a lot of concepts get reused in these superhero films.
Yeah.
So it would not be like my biggest pet peeve that they use this concept, is how this concept was executed. Rather than being this serious kind of plot twist, the way it was done in Batman Begins and handled really well by Nolan, I feel like this plot twist was kind of botched, almost for comedic effect.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of that turnaround was that it was comedic. I mean, when Tony meets him, this guy that you think is, the Mandarin, that Ben Kingsley's character that's been feared throughout the whole movie, that has been set up in the marketing and everything as being, the next great movie supervillain,
Yes.
turned out to be a comedic character. If this had been an Austin Powers movie or, something along that line,
It did feel kind of
it
Austin
would have
Powers
worked
At times, yeah.
for this. And, we just had our own spoiler alert. Stokes is no longer with us, and now we have Arethalia with us instead.
Hi.
Arethalia, welcome. We were talking about this last night. Arethalia and I were talking about it as we went home. If when Ben Kingsley, playing the Mandarin, had been revealed, and it turns out that he was playing the Mandarin character. Like Ben Kingsley was, the terrorist leader, but he was putting on makeup and costume and playing a character. I could have completely understood that.
Kind of the same way Tony Stark is Iron Man.
Yes.
And you would have a brilliant parallel to
Exactly.
make this execution.
Superheroes put on a costume because Iron Patriot, you had the whole theme of we're painting him to look better, to make him look more American or more imposing or whatever, and you could have had, here's a terrorist doing the same thing, coming up with this long bearded, character that sits on this throne with smoke and skulls, and then it's really just another guy who uses fear.
Yeah, I can see that, but
She
I
loved it.
I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I threw all my expectations out the window.
Mhm.
So
Apparently.
I thought it was funny. I enjoyed it for what they meant it to be, which was for comedic relief.
So we're taking one of the most iconic villain in the history of the Iron Man franchise that dates back to the 1960s. And we're just going to build him up in marketing and building him up perfectly in the film. Have a great actor and Sir Ben Kingsley cast as him. And then we're going to botch that for comedic relief.
Well, see, to you it was botched. To me, it wasn't botched.
No, let me make this perfectly clear. I have no problem with the flip, with the reveal that, even that Guy Pearce is definitely this movie version of the Mandarin. My problem is how they handle that, and you're saying you love it, and I just don't understand how you could.
Because I have no loyalty to the previous character.
Even if
I
you
have
don't,
no
you've watched
background.
we've been talking about the marketing, the build-up of the film on this podcast,
Uh-huh.
and just how serious of a threat the Mandarin was going to be, and you saw him rising in the first half of this film.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, boom, you've already said it felt like something out of an Austin Powers movie. So here we have probably the most serious Iron Man movie of all three.
It still wasn't that serious. I mean, it's not a Schindler's List.
It is not a Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises.
It's not,
level
and there
of
were lots of
seriousness.
things
That's
that happened
true.
throughout the entire movie that felt kind of Austin Powers-y. The
little bit,
entire
yeah.
movie had a lot
Like
of...
what?
An action comedy edge to it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his one-liners, and there's some
Yes, there one.
funny action things that happen here and there, and
That's part of
comedy-
the Tony Stark character, but he knows when to get serious, when it's time to get serious. And to
maybe.
No, not maybe, he does. If you know
Maybe.
anything about the character, he does.
Yeah.
But
The
see-
character in the comics, you saw him get serious at the end of Avengers when
Yeah.
he can crack all the one-liners you want, but when it's time to save the world, I'll put my life on the stake to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Life on the line. to do
I
it.
understand
Excuse
what
me.
Brad is saying.
But
Tony
he can still
Stark.
crack
I'm not
one-liners
trying
more
to
than
take a
serious.
crap on your point, Gina. I'm sorry. But it's just,
You
that's
should
how,
be.
I'm just really passionate about this.
Well, I can tell, but see, that's a very personal response that you had
Yeah.
to the movie, and I
That's
had
the way the character is. That's how
To
the
you.
character
I have two other thoughts I'm going to throw out there.
Okay.
One is that, and this is what I said to Brad. when they revealed the Mandarin in the movie,
Which I turned to Jerry at this point and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "I'm really pissed off."
Yeah.
that was
Yes,
not
you
my
did.
exact
and
words.
I heard some words from Brad. I'm just thinking, I can't wait to hear what Brad's gonna say because I know
We're
he's
all
gonna
thinking
hate it,
that.
and it's gonna be pretty funny. But
And it was kind of funny.
But-
my reaction, not the botched attempt.
yeah, it was really funny in the context of this movie. I mean, it
Mhm.
was a funny scene. It was an entertaining scene. I can't say that I've ever seen anything quite like that.
It shocked
true.
me. It literally
It was
And that
shocking.
was the point.
It
Yes.
felt like
Point.
a different movie, though. Like, it honestly
And-
felt
I
like...
didn't feel that way.
And Gina brought it up. That was the point. The whole thing about the Mandarin that was brought up was that here's this character who is manufactured to look evil, manufactured to make you put all your attention on him while the real villain is doing his thing.
yeah.
And that was the whole point of this movie universe's Mandarin.
And if you think about it, the Killian, he's the kind of guy, at least maybe I'm reading into his character a little bit, but he's the kind of guy that wouldn't want to even come close to being in line with someone else. So he's going to pick the dumbest, silliest person to play this
I
because
suppose
he
you're
doesn't
right,
want
yeah.
anybody else to, undermine him or maybe throw him over.
That could be, yeah.
Gina says that this... You made the point that it makes sense within the context of this film because you said it at
Jerry
times...
said that.
I said
You
that.
said that? Okay, sorry.
Credit where
but
credit is
you
due,
liked
Brad.
it more than anybody, I would say, out of this group of people podcasting.
But once again, I haven't read any of the comics. I don't have any preconceived notions about any of the characters, and I purely came from a standpoint of I'm watching this film and accepting it for what it is right now. And in the moment, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And there was
Let me
a
just
lot of
make the point.
laughter.
Throw any context I have about the characters or anything out the window.
I don't
Let's
think
just
that's
look.
possible for you.
Well, I'm going to try to remove myself for this
Okay.
point I'm about to make. And I'm just going to look at this movie alone. I'm
Okay.
even going to throw out the marketing for the movie.
Okay.
Just watching the movie. I know Tony Stark's one-liners are always going to be there. I wrote that in my review. But this is kind of a different look, a more serious take on not only Iron Man, but Tony Stark, to the point that probably his second best friend besides Colonel Rhodes, besides Rhodey, Happy Hogan, is attacked by this terrorist and killed. And almost killed, not killed, nearly killed. To the point where he says, "Come to my front door. I'll take you on one-on-one." Was any of that moment not serious? Was that
very
'cause that looked
serious.
yeah, that was a
serious
very
to me?
serious moment.
Very, very serious. And then we're gonna take the guy who we thought was responsible, who really probably should have been responsible for these attacks, and we're gonna turn him into a giant joke. It just felt out of
But
place.
here's the thing, too, and here's the purpose of it. Tony's all his attention is diverted.
Yeah.
And that was what Killian wanted. He wanted to be unassuming. He didn't want people to
I
realize.
understand that,
Yeah.
which is why I
And
have no
I
problem
think
with
it says a lot. I mean, if the movie's trying to make any real world parallels as well, it says a lot about. Look at just the I guess the fervor that having somebody like an Osama bin Laden causes.
Mhm.
Somebody that suddenly becomes a boogeyman or is demonized. And that has a lot of power for everybody, for people who are trying to get wars started or cause people to change their way of thinking. You have somebody that you can hold up and say, this person specifically wants to hurt you. That's what happened in this movie.
George W. Bush made a presidency out of it.
The Mandarin is that character that Killian realizes the power of that.
Yeah.
In the context of this movie, it absolutely works.
Oh,
No,
it was-
the concept works, but how the concept was executed does not work. You make a comedic ploy rather than...
But here's the thing, it didn't work for you. It worked
Yeah.
for me. It worked for a lot of people in that theater. You're just
Yeah.
taking
There's a lot of
personal
people
offense
it
to
didn't work with.
Yeah, but obviously overall, it seems to be
Oh.
pretty overwhelmingly popular. Most reviews have been positive. Rotten Tomatoes has this movie at 78%.
But
Yeah.
if there's one problem that people have with this movie, it's this.
Actually,
that
I'm not
is
sure
what-
if that's the case. I've read
No,
some.
Yeah.
I've read multiple comments. I know Jerry has said that. And I'm not trying to
I was
contradict
reading-
Jerry. I'm not trying to like
Don't
say
contradict me.
you're wrong and I'm right, but I've read just as many people who were upset
Hey,
about it.
I went into it thinking that people were going to be trashing this movie about this, and I couldn't find anybody. Trashing it on all the comments on Topless Robot that I was reading, and all the comments on Rotten Tomatoes, and the reviews that I read. Now, I will say, to defend Brad's perspective, and I just want to put this in context, and I said this to Brad in the theater,
I know what you're gonna say. Thank you.
Mandarin is Iron Man's #1 enemy.
He's his Joker.
Yeah, he's his Joker. And imagine watching The Dark Knight, and halfway through the movie, you find out that the Joker is just some crazy guy, an actor that is being paid by
The mob.
or something
Yeah.
to distract Batman.
Yeah.
I would have been furious too.
Yeah.
It's, you take the power out of the character. Now, if it would have been the Joker was, playing things up a little bit, okay, could have been okay with that. But they really did do something that I think is unprecedented here. And
It was
one of the
unprecedented.
comments that I made was...
One sec. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I don't think it's unprecedented in the concept because it was done in Batman Begins. I think it's unprecedented in the way they executed it.
Well,
But go ahead.
Batman Begins is more of using a decoy, and that's pretty common. I mean, you see people using a decoy, or you see that, but to have it a popular, prominent character turn out to be a comedic character,
But kind of didn't.
That was unprecedented. You're right,
because
Jerry.
we saw that the real Mandarin was
Yeah.
actually
And
the other guy.
Like as we said earlier in the podcast, at first I was like, well, no, the idea of the Mandarin is Guy Pearce is Killian.
yeah.
But no, I believe Shane Black, like we said earlier,
Yeah.
intended him, especially when you saw
the tattoos.
the tattoos at the end,
Yeah.
to be this Iron Man's version of the Mandarin.
Okay.
But the one comment that I wanted to make,
Okay.
and I'm having to remember what that comment was now, is that I am surprised. I am very surprised that this plot development, this plot element, made it into the actual movie. I am shocked that somewhere along the way, somebody at Marvel
Maybe
Studios,
Kevin Feige.
somebody at Marvel Comics, somebody didn't step in and say, wait a minute, you're taking a major, maybe B-list Mandarin. You're taking
But he's Iron Man's top back.
yeah, you're taking this character's major enemy and doing something crazy with him. I'm surprised that made it, that this seems like the kind of thing that you would hear of like a couple years later they would say in the DVD commentary.
Yeah.
We originally thought of making the Mandarin into this. I think it's going to be a decision that polarizes people because it polarizes me myself.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me is watching the movie saying, oh my gosh, this is funny, this is enjoyable. Part of me saying, wow, there was a really imposing character there, and they killed the potential of what might have
Thank
been
you. Yeah.
another...
I feel that it was so much potential wasted as we could Ben Kingsley's such a talented actor,
Exactly.
which adds to it as well. It's not like it was Joe Smo playing this part.
Yeah.
This was an established guy who had played Gandhi, for goodness
Yeah.
sake.
Now I have a question. What if instead of in all the upbuilding to this movie's release, what if we hadn't seen the Mandarin? Maybe he had just been kind of mentioned a lot, but we'd seen a lot of the what was the
Killian.
Killian?
well, no, not necessarily,
Aldrich
but
Killian.
his experiment. What was that called?
The extremists.
Yeah, what if we saw a lot of the extremist soldiers? What if that had
What
been
if
the
there was
thing?
more focus
that
on
had-
AIM and the extremist soldiers
Yeah,
because
instead?
we
And-
never saw a lot of that.
And then
That's true.
would we
Yeah.
have reacted to the
It was there,
Mandarin
you
as
just had to
much?
It was
Looking
subtle.
for it.
It was
Yeah.
subtle.
Yes, it was subtle. I think from a movie standpoint, I would still be pissed how they handled it comedically.
Yeah.
And I would be upset because I like your character in the comics, but I couldn't complain. I wouldn't be saying, well, he's the focal point of this movie's
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Which I realize him being the focal point of the marketing aided in the twist, it made it all the more shocking. I respect that.
Sure, because we knew who the Mandarin was going in.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
I
movie.
mean,
But
when that
once
happened, there was
again-
like silence in the theater.
Yes.
We were all like,
I mean,
Yes.
and Tony Stark asked, "Are you a body double? Are you serious? What's
Yeah.
going?" He couldn't
Yeah.
even believe it,
Yeah, he figured it was, exactly.
and I was just as shocked as his character was.
Mhm.
I think that was your point.
But I mean, Kristen, you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I just want to get my 2 cents
Go
in.
ahead.
Y'all are kind of dominating here. I just want to say, I mean, I thought what they did, sitting in the theater watching this, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is freaking brilliant. You know,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
did too.
exactly what we've all said, you know, I mean, it was a distraction. There was no way in heck that they would ever consider Killian at this point, you know, or even think
Yes.
maybe he was involved. It was absolutely brilliant. It was hilarious. At the same time, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is so disappointing. Because all the hype was around the Mandarin
Yeah.
and everything. And also, it was very disappointing to me to watch an actor like Ben Kingsley acting like such a doofus.
Although
Yeah,
that
he
was
did
so
a really
out of
good
character.
job.
He did a great job, and it was very funny. But I'm sitting there going, "They're making him do this. This is Ben Kingsley. This is ridiculous."
But I'm
Well, he
waiting.
did choose to do it.
We are
You're
waiting-
right,
signed
you're
a
right,
contract.
You're absolutely right.
We are waiting for this confrontation between
It's built up. so
Tony
long.
Stark and the Mandarin that we have seen. That we've said, okay, it looks
Exactly.
like they've done a good job of translating this comic character
Exactly.
into a film, and then you realize we're never going to get that. in this
You
Mhm.
bring that up, never gonna get that. It breaks my heart as an Iron Man fan because we'll probably never get to see this version of we won't this version of Tony Stark take on the Mandarin. This is it. It was wasted
I don't know.
on this attempt.
Maybe not, because the world doesn't know that. Well, I guess at the end when they're taking him in.
Yes, they
police
know.
or-
He's,
Yeah,
he's
they
cracking
know.
jokes.
Somebody had a good, and this, I don't know whose crazy theory this was online, but they said people said it was so good it'll obviously just be ignored. Somebody said, what if Thanos was watching and saw the power that this, Mandarin figure caused, and he somehow
Picked him up.
took back over,
Okay.
Trevor, gave him these magic rings,
Hmm.
brought that element in, and used him, and I was
Yeah.
like, that's
Possibility.
kind of interesting.
That would be cool.
I just gotta
That
say,
would be
this
a
is
little
how,
redeeming.
if I were writing the beginning for Iron Man 3, this is how I would have wrote it, okay? This is how I'd have handled the Mandarin. This is gonna be real quick.
Okay.
Okay, you know how at the beginning of Avengers we see Thanos giving Loki this army, pretty
Yeah.
much. It would have been, alright, that was Thanos' first attempt to take down Earth's mightiest heroes. Obviously, Tony Stark's their leader,
Mm-hmm.
so let's take him out personally. Let's destroy everything he loves, and then we see Thanos somehow getting the 10 magic rings to Ben Kingsley's Mandarin, and he's able. And there's an explanation for these magical rings within the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Wouldn't have mind. I mean,
That's
of
a
course,
good point.
as a
Uh-huh.
fanboy, I would have loved to have saw something like this. But I had no problem with how it was set up as a realistic terrorist. I'd have loved to have seen that as well.
Yeah.
I just feel either one, anything instead of how they handled this execution. But obviously, some people disagree. Some people like it, and I respect their opinion, Gina. I respect your opinion. But we can agree to disagree. But
Sounds like we've said about everything
Exactly.
we've been said about the
Yes.
Mandarin.
let's just move on to we getting toward the film's climax. Obviously, at this point, Iron Patriot is also captured by Killian, that group of people. So is Pepper
Mhm.
Potts. And they're going to use this is after the Mandarin reveal.
Okay.
They're going to use the Iron Patriot armor to get aboard Air Force One. Alright, and this culminates in one of the best scenes I've ever seen in a superhero film. When the Iron Patriot, it's not Don Cheadle, it's one of the extremist thugs in there.
It's Killian himself.
No, Killian's
No,
not
it's
in the
not
armor.
Killian. It's
Oh,
not
was
the
it
main
Killian?
thug.
Oh,
It
okay.
was the main guy,
Okay.
Taggart.
Oh, yeah.
Taggart, I
Okay.
believe.
Yes.
So Taggart is in, he goes up, attacks Air Force One, and basically, to set the scene, you've seen it, they teased this in the Super Bowl ad. You see all the White House staffers falling out of Air Force One, and Tony can't carry all of them.
Mhm.
And this scene is just intense, guys. I mean, and this is after the Mandarin reveal. I'm like, man, this almost makes up for how epic this scene is. He's like, he basically gets them. He's like, he can't carry but 4, Jarvis says. So
Yeah.
he grabs a couple. He's like, we'll do like barrel of monkeys.
Yeah.
And like, so he does that, and he does it, guys. He saves them, pulls. What were your thoughts of that scene?
It was a really exciting scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was one of the best of the movie.
It was
And-
like, this is what superhero films are all about,
And
right
then,
here.
must I say, it ends with a rather Austin Powers-y kind of
Which
moment.
exactly, which is what I was gonna bring up. This is probably maybe my second biggest pet peeve of the film, is he's doing it by remote. We find out he's doing it by remote.
Because, I mean, a truck smashes into him and he goes into a million pieces.
Yeah,
the armor
exactly.
does.
I thought that was a very Looney Tunes kind of tacked on way to end this
A little.
brilliant scene.
Yeah.
And my problem with it is this: I feel that when scenes like that happen, I referenced the Spider-Man 2 scene where he stops the train.
Yeah.
You feel like Peter Parker is putting his life on the line to save these people he doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Where I felt like here, Tony Stark's life was never in danger, and it
Well,
just diminished
but
the scene
they-
just a bit.
They did explain the reason. They said you can't go after both of them.
Exactly.
He couldn't go after Pepper because Pepper was captured and they were in the boat trying to get there as fast as they could, and he either had the choice of going after Pepper or
The president.
going after the president and the staffers. And once again, it's about Tony using his tools
Mm-hmm.
to get the job done.
And
It's about-
that's kind of one of the brilliance of the Iron Man character. Tony Stark's so smart that he can kind of outsmart all
Sure,
these
yeah.
baddies.
And he does that here. I mean, I think
I didn't have a major. I'd say it's a nitpick.
I think a big part of the movie was about Tony learning to let some things go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't have to be the person in the armor if he can invent it and control it. He can let it do its own thing.
Is that a
That's true.
political drone statement right there, Jerry?
What? No, it's not. He doesn't have to be the person there. You're gonna bring up Pepper. I know you're gonna bring up the end part with Pepper.
I am in a minute when we get
Okay.
to that scene. So yeah, that scene was diminished a little bit. At the same time, I appreciated kind of the brilliance of the Tony Stark.
Now,
Christian.
was it really diminished? I mean, I think the point of the suit is that he can do things like that without risking his life. You know, the whole time you're thinking that it's him, and then you're like, oh, whoa, it wasn't. To me, it wasn't a letdown. It was just like, oh, wow, that's cool. That was a good time saver. That got it accomplished exactly what he needed to accomplish.
He's been in danger plenty of other times in the movie. I mean, it's not like we're seeing him
It
never
doesn't
be
lessen his character.
never be
Yeah.
put in danger.
It doesn't lessen the character. It just kind of lessens the moment for me.
It
But
was
that's
a
me personally.
I
It
That
was
is
a
me
letdown
personally.
to you.
Yeah.
When you
I would
I mean,
say-
the other option was, from the way the movie put it, was he could have went in the costume and just decided,
Not to go after Pepper.
not to go after Pepper.
No, but what if
Exactly.
that wasn't the situation? I would have I mean, I understand that this played into the climax of the movie, but
Yeah,
if this scene wasn't in that situation, I just think it would have been cool.
but then
thinking
it
he
wouldn't
was
have
in
happened.
the suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it wouldn't
Yeah,
have
I
happened
mean-
that way. Then.
I mean, I completely understand if this scene
Yeah.
had happened and then you realize that he's just sitting at home watching TV.
That
That would have been unbelievably disappointing. But I mean, that's not Tony Stark though. He's gonna be in the middle of it if at all possible.
But that's why we
This
have
is just
these
a solution to a problem.
conversations about these epic scenes and concepts, so that that kind of lets me come to peace with it. But then they kind of tack on that comedical moment where he does get hit by
Yeah.
the truck. Maybe
I
it
thought
was
it
more
was funny.
so that, but I understand these movies do have a little bit more comedical elements. So, but let's get that leads us up to the climax of the film, where Tony and Don Cheadle's character War Machine get to where Aldrich Killian is holding Pepper, and we get to see probably the most epic climax of all the Iron Man movies, Avengers excluded, which is he doesn't have the Mark 42. The Mark 42 is still recharging at this point from, I believe, from the
With
scene.
the kid. He's with the kid still.
Is it with the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's with the kid at this point. So Andrew Stokes is joining us again. So good to have you back, Andrew. But so yeah,
Thank
okay.
you, Jerry. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It's recharging with the kid. But so he goes to take him on, and instead of having one suit, he brings his entire arsenal. He gets Jarvis to enact the house party initiative,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
which
Operation House
we've
Party.
seen that. Which now we see, you know, you wonder why it's called the Mark 42 armor, and the last armor we've seen at the end of Avengers is the Mark 7.
Yeah.
He's developed all these different armors in between to kind of, you know, make up for the fact that he's a man among gods now.
Yeah.
He's like, how do I push myself to the next level? Not only can he
Distraction,
control
Pepper says.
a distraction, Pepper says, so not only can he control the armor with his mind, with the technology he has invented, it's not a result of extremists as it is in the comics, but now he has 42 marks. So let's talk about this scene, guys.
That kind of actually led to one of the confusing parts for me, because he seemed to get Jarvis back online, and if he could just pop these up, why didn't he pop in? Like he seemed to have to recharge Mark 42 before he used any of them, and if he could have just pulled all of them up and get in and out of them quickly like he did in the film, why did he have to wait all the way until 42 is at 90-something%? Like, why didn't he jump in one of the other ones?
No, I absolutely agree with you. Remember that as the Mark 42 was winding down, Jarvis was having issues.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
Jarvis
I mean,
said he
I
had to
don't know
reboot.
how long Jarvis was having issues.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'd have to go back and rewatch the movie
Yeah.
for that and stuff. But
But he seemed to be
so
back
I'm
online.
sure that had something to do with it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
absolutely agree with you. You know, you do kind of wonder what's going on.
And
there.
another element was that they were having to wait for the rubble to be cleared.
Right.
Yes,
I
that's
guess. I mean, I assume they were all destroyed when the house was destroyed, and that's why.
true. Yeah,
but
that
then,
is
but then they
exactly.
like so many of them popped up, and
Because
it
he was
like,
getting
well, wait a minute.
he was getting updates about the progress of the rubble being cleared throughout the whole movie.
Yes.
And so it was finally at that point that everything.
And
worked out.
Killian is not only holding Pepper hostage at this point, but he has injected her with the extremists, which his
And
point here is to turn her into pretty much a human bomb, which the
Yes.
extremists it affects different people in different ways. Some people can handle the doses, some people cannot. So I gotta say, this is probably the strongest climax of an Iron Man movie. I always kind of have a problem with the final.
Mhm.
Like Iron Man
Too
2,
short.
it was really lackluster. Iron Man 1 was pretty good, but it was a little short, even for my taste. But I feel like we do have a finale to see. You know, I think a lot of people were complaining Tony's not in one suit enough. He's not in the Mark 42 enough. But we get to see him go from armor to armor to
Right.
armor to all these armors you would never thought you would see.
Yeah. Plus, like we said, this is more about Tony Stark than it is
Yeah.
Iron Man. I think that helps highlight that it's Tony Stark that makes the man.
So while Pepper's being held hostage and Killian is confronting Tony Stark, Don Cheadle's having a really good moment where he's rescuing the president at this point too. I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah. I agree.
But this gets to kind of one of the other parts that I didn't like per se about the movie. There's a scene where Pepper falls to her death, it looks like. Of course, I knew right when she died, supposedly you were to think she
Right.
died at this point in the film that she wasn't. I said, she's got the extremist. She's going to heal.
Yeah.
We all
So
knew that.
meanwhile, we all knew that.
Yeah.
Killian and Tony continue to fight. They fall down. This is the part where Killian rips the shirt off, revealing he is this movie's version of the Mandarin, and he's about to give Tony Stark. He's about to give him punch his ticket, if you will. And then
I will.
And then what
Punch his
happens,
ticket.
Jerry?
Turns out that Pepper shows up and she's got the extremists in her, and she ends up taking out Killian.
With
And-
a giant pole, using it as a battering ram.
Yes.
Which, just to note, in the comics, that's the way that Tony Stark kills the extremist-powered person he is fighting in the comics. He picks up a pole and hits them exactly like that to send them to their death at a very construction scene setting like this rocks and oil rig was.
See, I love the Pepper coming in and saving the day because, I mean, well, if you've read the blog, you know that I'm a feminist, and so I love the fact that a
Really?
woman,
You're
yeah,
a feminist?
yeah, you didn't know
I
that.
What?
I love the fact that a woman comes in, and saves his butt, basically.
Yeah, I
and
enjoyed that.
you know,
too.
I felt like for the first time, Pepper was no longer this feeble little thing that he felt like he had to
Protect.
Now
Yeah,
she
could
could
look out for herself.
Yeah.
And she proved that throughout the film, you know.
Yeah, but
she's
now
proved that
she
for a long time.
physically has the
Yes.
ability to protect herself. And in fact, when they ended and said that they took the extremist out of her, I was kind of like, oh man, I was kind of hoping Pepper would like join the ranks, you know?
I know, right?
But
But
I liked it. I
the-
thought she did a great
the
job.
whole time, this is the only reason it wasn't lackluster for me because Pepper saved the day. Really, it was more the fact that Tony didn't, because the entire time, and I mean, now that it didn't happen, I'm not as disappointed as I was leaving the film. But I kept waiting for Tony to inject himself with a form of the extremist, because in the comic books, it's not the form of the serum that can make him breathe fire and stuff like that. It just pretty much makes him a little tougher and makes him be able to do things like plug in the satellites and stuff like that, which is why he can control his armor in the comic books. It makes him stronger, but not to the point of not even Captain America strong, let alone Superman strong. So the whole point, I'm waiting for, you know, them to inject him with a form of extremist. And when that didn't happen, I was a little disappointed. But I understand that's the comic. This is the movie. But still, I just wanted to see. So we have this character who we have sacrificed being Kingsley for to build up, and Pepper kills him. Not Iron Man.
I mean, I feel like I think to that point, the only reason Pepper was able to kill him in that part was because he was already weakened. He was already in a weakened state leading up to that. I mean, Pepper finished him off, and I really liked that Pepper stepped in, because I feel like throughout the whole series, Pepper has kind of been like this strong character.
She's a very strong female.
She
Yes,
was.
she is.
I mean, she's the one that got the information on Obadiah Stane in the first one.
Uh-huh.
And I forget what she did. I was just thinking she did something in the second one, but I couldn't remember. And this one almost made her like a little bit more helpless. Like Tony did protect her earlier, even though she did use the armor to some good effect. I did when she tried to use the blaster and wound up like spinning herself in circles. I did lean over to my girlfriend and said, "Women drivers." And she go ahead. She loves when I say stuff like that.
Sure she does.
But and then she literally became the damsel in distress. So I think she was a little more helpless in this than she has been in other ones, and that's why I really liked. And also, I think Tony Stark, part of the problem is he was having this anxiety where all these people, are, like Thor and Captain America, gods, a man among gods, that he really has this problem. And Pepper became one of those people. And I think he kind of learned, relying on other people. It kind of, you know what I mean?
Well, and
Yeah.
right before she fell to her death, he said, you got to jump to me. I'm going to catch you.
But
And
you
then
have to let go.
he doesn't, and I think...
Well, she didn't let go. She kind of...
Yeah, she
Oh,
fell.
yeah,
She
she
fell.
fell. So the aim was on
She didn't
you.
have
But
faith.
so part of it was also that even if your man can't save you, you can save yourself. But then again, that's my
If you've been injected with super serum.
Yes.
Otherwise, ladies...
I thought it was a big part of throughout the movie. We've watched Tony. I mean, Avengers. He has to be part of a team,
Yep.
And we've
But
watched
he
him.
is the one who makes the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, but we've watched
But he
him
still has
start
plans to
giving
be
up
player.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier, that he was using the armor rather than having to be in it because he had to be in two places. He was learning, he was having to rely on this kid and work with this little kid and stuff. And now Pepper steps in and saves the day. It's about Tony learning to give up some control as well.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's why I didn't have a bigger problem with it.
Mhm.
That it was ultimately Pepper who saved his ass at the end of the film, because it works very well within the context of the film.
Yeah.
Which is, I even agree with, to the point that even the Mandarin reveal works well within the context of the film.
Mandarin, Brad.
The Mandarin reveal. But well, we can just call him the Mandarin because he wasn't the real thing.
Maybe you've been right all along.
The Mandarin Reveal even worked in the context of the film. I just didn't like how that was
Sure.
handled. I felt Shane Black had all the right ingredients and formulas, just they all didn't come together perfectly, which, if y'all don't mind, will kind of lead me to what I will call the semi-botched ending of this film. Which, not the climax, which is kind of the bookend of the Iron Man trilogy, if you will. How basically we're to the point where he this is pretty much done as a voiceover by Tony, showing
Yeah.
a few scenes at the end of the film where he fixes Pepper, gets the extremists out of her. He's able to fix that. But not only that, he is able to now remove the arc reactor that was holding the shrapnel back from his heart out of his chest.
And he removes the shrapnel too.
And they're in the shrapnel,
Yeah.
but there's really no explanation to it,
And
and
he destroys all the suits as well.
he destroys all the suits, which is a major point that leads us to believe that, yes, Tony Stark is Iron Man, but does he necessarily need to be Iron Man anymore?
Mhm.
And I have a problem with how that was handled, because was he just having the arc reactor in his chest just to have it in his chest? Could he have had it out like in Iron Man 2? I mean, why? I don't
Right.
get it.
It isn't really explained. I mean, you could kind of feel like, especially because they showed that little magnetic thing. I don't know. It kind of, you could say the technology wasn't there,
But
but
now it's caught
Well,
up
he
to
even
us.
said
so-
that. He said it took some tinkering for me to figure out how to do it, but I
Yeah.
eventually learned how
And
to
my
do
question is, I'm glad you brought that quote up, Gina, because the tinkering. A lot of people, I wish I could interpret it this way, but I'm not going to interpret it this way,
Mhm.
is that when he did the tinkering and got Pepper healed from the extremist, that he created a version of the extremist that could heal him, that would allow him
That's
to
a
remove
possibility.
the arc reactor. A lot of fanboys want to interpret it that
it. I
way.
don't know.
I didn't see it in that context
see
in the
it.
Yeah.
film, but I would have loved for that to have been done. I think it would have been a more plausible explanation.
especially because the formula he had written on the back of that card or whatever.
Exactly,
Yeah,
which
you're
was
right.
kind of like the catalyst to bring to
That
push-
she used.
to create the extremist element in the first place.
Now I'm a little confused. I thought the reactor was what powered the suit while he was in it. Did he
It's
change
both,
that?
right?
It does both.
It does both. It keeps
Yeah.
the shrapnel from
Right.
entering his heart, the electromagnets.
But you
in
saying are the
reactor.
new suits? The new suits,
Yeah.
I guess, have their own power source.
I guess
'cause
they
they are
have to
floating around.
because
Yeah.
they fly
Yeah.
around. Okay. I was just wondering if I'd missed something or
No.
not.
Which
Yeah,
it
I'm not
gets to the point of where in the comics it's explained that science did catch up to us.
Mhm.
Modern
Uh-huh.
technology, I don't need
Well, with Mr. Fantastic in the comic book world.
it. Yes, exactly. Anything is possible. Even science to the point of magic, which Andrew Stokes
I
loves.
love it. It's my
Yeah.
favorite.
But I mean, how did Kristen?
I thought that Pepper kind of explained it a little bit. When she comes home and she thinks he's in the suit, and you find out that he's really downstairs tinkering.
Yeah.
And she's saying you're in the suit at home. You're relying too much on this suit and blah. blah.
Yeah.
I mean, you realize that he's not really in it at that point in time, but I think that was a huge part of it. He likes the suit.
Yeah.
I mean, notice you don't even see him in a car
No,
until he's on the run. He's
Yeah.
in the suit everywhere. He
Well,
leaves
when he's
the suit
meeting-
outside of a restaurant.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
so
his
you're
location.
saying that the point of the film is to get him off the reliance
Yes.
on the suit.
Yes.
Yes.
When he
He's
has
relying
the
on the
panic
suit.
attack, when he's
Yeah.
eating at the restaurant and
Exactly.
the kids are talking about New York and he has the panic attack,
He doesn't feel
He-
safe.
His
He
instinct
runs
is to
into
get
the
into the
suit.
suit. The suit
Yeah.
is safety and comfort. And
Well, it was also to
Hold
check
him.
his heart, and he was
I
thinking he
know,
had a
but-
stroke.
but
Are we in agreement? I agree with you, and that is a central theme of the film. But are we in agreement? I don't know if we are in agreement on this with how it was handled. Just there should have been more explanation to why he can remove the arc reactor.
I thought it
I
seemed
thought
a
that
little.
was the explanation.
I thought it
that
seemed a
he
little-
was learning to let go. He didn't need to be Iron Man.
Okay,
I feel like-
he didn't need to wear the suit all the time.
I feel like the ending was a little tacked on. It was kind of rushed, like the very
It
very
was.
last part.
It was.
But I don't necessarily have a problem with what happened.
Well, at first I was kind of like, wait, because he throws it in the sea, and I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
does
I
that
thought
mean
that
there's
was
no
a
more
little
Iron
crazy.
Man? Like,
you bring up that point. No more Iron Man. There was a problem.
Yay.
They said that there's going to be a major game changer in this film that Joss Whedon will have to deal with when writing and directing Avengers 2. That now we obviously know that major game changer is the fact that Tony Stark no longer needs Iron Man, and from everything we can tell, the destruction of the suits, the removal of the arc reactor,
Mm.
that he isn't Iron Man anymore.
That's why Avengers 2, no
Well-
Iron Man, Iron Patriot all the way, baby.
No,
Let's
so-
do it.
But now they're renegotiating Downey's contract so he
Mhm.
can come back for Avengers 2. And Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, has said Iron Man will play a major role in Avengers 2. So, like,
well,
But
I
will
mean,
he
the
be Iron
command,
Man?
the command was clean slate, and so to me, that says we're starting back over.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
there
he
will
could
be
make another suit.
there
That's
will
my
be
thought.
another suit.
And
That's
he
my
always
thought.
does
He's
that
just
in the
starting
comics, makes
over.
new suits,
Yeah.
upgrades technology.
So-
But it almost looks like he doesn't need Iron Man. I guess that doesn't
Making
necessarily
new
mean
suits
he
coming
won't-
from a
will
different
be Iron
place.
Man.
Yes.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
he's not
because
making
it's no
these-
longer
The Hulkbuster.
intimate. It's no
symbol.
longer in him. You know, he's throwing it out to sea, and so now he can be himself. I am Iron Man, and I can separate.
The engineer.
Yeah, the
So-
mechanic.
Mechanic.
The
excuse me.
mechanic,
The
yes,
mechanic.
the mechanic.
Because basically, now the two biggest weekends of all time, opening weekends, Avengers 207 million, Iron Man 3 grossed 175.3 million
Mhm.
this weekend. Have Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in them. He
Yeah.
pretty much has to come back for Avengers 2.
Yeah, and I think
He
he
does.
helped make Iron Man what it was and set Phase 1 all the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He jump started the Marvel Cinematic
He
Universe.
did.
He did.
He really did.
He used his arc reactor and just got things powered.
So, do you guys think there should be any more Iron Man films? Or should he just come back, do Avengers 2, maybe Avengers 3,
I
and
don't-
that's it?
As far as the Marvel phases and cinematic universe, I don't think they're necessary.
Yeah, I don't either.
And especially if they can't get Robert Downey Jr., unless they recast him, they're not going to reboot it before Avengers
They're
3.
not going to read
You
it
know?
Yeah.
after that.
So I don't think they're necessary. I'd like to see an Iron Man 4 or even
Yeah.
5, but I don't think they're necessary. And I don't know whether
I was
we
reading
will
an
or not.
article in the local newspaper, and they said, "Man, the real Iron Man will appear in Iron Man 4." I'm like, okay,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
by this point, they're gonna back up.
Somebody's coming.
They would back a Brinks truck up to Robert
I know.
Downey Jr.'s
Yeah.
house to get him to play this character
Yeah.
because they're making back 10 times.
Yeah.
what they're
Exactly,
putting
and you
into
know
these
they're going to
movies.
brainstorm and try everything that they possibly can to get him to come back or to find a way to do it without him.
They're going to capture
But-
Gwyneth
Does he need to
Paltrow.
do?
but little do they know, she's going to finish them off.
Does he need to just be in Avengers 2, or does he need to finish the Avengers? He's finished the Iron
We'll
Man
see what
trilogy.
happens with him in
Yeah.
Avengers 2 and then
Yeah.
answer that
I'm
question.
interested to see how they're going to get him part of the team, and then depending on what happens, maybe he'll die.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was
Josh,
just thinking
there's a
finally
rumor
get
that
everyone to
Josh
get along.
Whedon will
Yeah.
kill him off in the second Avengers.
Uh,
Sure.
Okay.
Just as everyone starts getting along and they're all buddy, he's gonna die. And
Yep.
Yeah, everyone will be torn apart again.
And after the credits, it'll turn out Ben Kingsley was Iron Man all along.
Oh!
Don't even say
No.
that. And it was all a giant joke. Okay, so I think that's just about going to wrap it up.
I
Jerry?
have a few criticisms.
Okay.
That I wanted to address. And
Go ahead, Jerry.
Gina, do you have some criticisms too? Okay. One of them was that I think was interesting was we were told the whole reason Jon Favreau didn't want to be, didn't want to direct this movie was because after Iron Man 2, he felt there was too much, like having to connect everything to Avengers and to the shared universe. This movie really didn't have that many connections.
It was a standalone Iron
Very
Man
much
film.
It was very standalone, which I'm definitely okay with that. But I definitely wanted to hear more references. I mean, there was like one reference to S.H.I.E.L.D., and we've just seen all this stuff
with Thor.
happening with the Mandarin, and suddenly S.H.I.E.L.D.'s like nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that kind of thing that just seemed to me like,
Why was Iron Man the only one responding?
Yeah.
just a
yeah,
reference.
yeah.
I mean, even a reference with like Nick Fury or something. I
Yeah.
want to see those little back and forth references that
Maybe
remind
the-
us this
the-
is a shared universe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, one of the things going into the film that I was looking for was Bruce Banner to show up at some point.
Yeah.
I'm happy he did.
That's the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
We're still talking spoilers, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then there were some references to. There was one reference to Thor. This
Yes.
had a hammer falling from the
Yeah,
sky or something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, with all the stuff that was going on with the president, I didn't need to see Captain America, but at least like mention his name, maybe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or even when the Iron Patriot suit showed up and you saw that color scheme, a
Yeah.
reference to Captain America. As far as the Jon Favreau thing, like I kind of got the impression, I didn't follow it that closely, but that he may have made those comments and backed out of Iron Man 3 before he ever even read like the
Yeah.
script, and it was just that he got a little jaded with that much involvement.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
obvious
that's
in
very
Iron Man
possible.
He
2.
had a
That's my guess.
preconceived notion of what he thought Iron
Right.
Man
That's
3
my
would
guess.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as involvement, behind the scenes, I felt like so.
Jared,
That was my first thing. Was there just didn't feel like there was as many of those little nods to other.
Right.
Yes.
and one of the reasons that may have been is because they don't know for sure if Robert Downey Jr. is going to come back. They
Captain
didn't
America
want-
still exists in the universe.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Number two.
I think that was the reason for the post
Now,
credit.
number two. You want to hear my biggest criticism of the whole movie? This
No.
is my biggest criticism.
the Mander.
No. You ready?
The
That's
Mandarin?
There was no AC/DC music in the whole movie. Iron Man 1 had AC/DC music. Iron Man 2 completely sold on AC/DC
Uh-huh.
music.
Shoot
Iron Man
the thrill.
3.
You should have at least heard shoot.
Yeah.
We got Eiffel 65, so sit down.
I think it's because it was Shane Black, and this was kind of how he
Maybe.
wanted to.
Still,
open
they've just
it up.
always
But I mean, it
tied.
was even in Avengers though. That's kind of
Yeah.
his theme. They
Yeah.
should have
Yeah.
been in there
That's
at
kind of
some
like
point.
ties in that, Tony Stark.
Well, he's in a darker, nice, happy place. Maybe he put his
And me and
AC/DC
Jerry,
music out the
and
pasture.
that was the argument I
Maybe he
made
should
to
have been
Jerry.
listening to the Jack then. I
Jerry
don't know.
was talking about when a few weeks back when we played that first big trailer, and he's like, "There's no AC/DC music." Where I'm like, I think they're taking Tony to a darker place. This is a more serious Iron Man. Exactly the same thing Andrew said here, but then I see the film and
There's like
Them-
4 or 5 different versions of Jingle Bells in this movie.
Yeah.
and
Even
Mandarin's
if
a,
AC/DC would have sang Jingle Bells, I would have been okay.
and Mandarin's a comedic role. So I
Yeah.
I think AC/DC would have fit perfectly in
Yeah,
this
it would have.
context.
Okay, and here's my real criticism. Well, because AC/DC is a huge criticism, but my real criticism is I didn't feel like they ever really resolved the issue of Tony's panic attacks, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was a huge element early in the movie, and him talking about what happened in New York, referencing the end of Avengers and going through that wormhole, and then that never went anywhere.
I think it may be saved. I think maybe he may have to face something that's not of this world again to truly confront those demons.
And that could be. That could be.
I think him working with Iron Patriot, Pepper Potts, kind of finishing off the bad guy, and he spent so much time doing good things out of the suit that some of the anxiety he had kind of subsided. The kid told him something that kind of helped him through
I
one.
think that was the key.
he said,
And it was
he
I feel
said
like he,
you're an inventor.
You're
Inventor.
an
Yeah,
inventor.
right. I think he
Build
feels.
something.
I think he
Build
because
something,
like
is
we
what
said, he
says.
was relying on the suit, taking the suit everywhere. I think he feels safer and more capable, and also safer with his surroundings, with the people he has in his life. That I feel like that kind of could have taken over. But I feel like there is a little bit more still. I mean, the whole movie, as you see after the credits, is he is talking through this stuff with
That's
a
true.
quote unquote doctor.
I'm not that
Yeah.
kind of
So-
Let's
doctor.
talk about that end credit scene, Jerry. Did you,
I just
one
want to
more-
say we have a text from a fan. We got a text from the fan of the podcast that just said the last podcast was superb.
Okay.
By the way, so
Are we name dropping?
just thank you, unnamed fan.
Okay, that's great. But let's talk about the end of let's end this podcast by talking about the very, very end, which is this after credit scene. I thought it did a little bit it was kind of still more comedic. It did a little bit to kind of tie into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it was basically a scene between Bruce Banner and Tony Stark, where, as Andrew mentioned, Tony Stark's talking out his problems with Bruce Banner. But although Bruce Banner is not the kind of person I want to talk my problems out with, really, I'm scared to
As
get
we know,
angry.
he's always angry.
Yeah,
Hulk
but
smash.
still, it didn't really serve to set up a major plot point in future Marvel films. How did you guys feel about that? How did you guys feel about the fact that the end credit scene was basically comedic relief, and it didn't? Was it just because we don't know if Downey's coming back?
Yes.
That's what you believe.
My question is, when did movies stop being entertainment and start being like the end all be all? Like, why can't the end epilogue thing just be something
Because
funny? Why do we have to have
You've
it?
set a status quo that all the other previous end credit scenes for other Marvel Cinematic Universe films
Have set
have
up
set
other
up.
things. That's very
even the
true.
end of Avengers 1
Yeah.
set up Thanos. They had their comedic scene with Shawarma, which was fine, but they also had that scene that set
Yeah,
something
Well,
up.
I think also is because like it didn't set up like you think about Nick Fury in the first Iron Man. It didn't set up a specific thing. It just set up that an Avengers movie is going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's kind of
I
like
was-
it was a cool little like funny thing at the end, and it's like, hey, this universe
But
still
it was
exists.
huge. I
That
mean,
was
that
huge.
was
that was a
huge.
game changer for movies.
For movies in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying the one with Bruce Banner wasn't. It was just a funny kind of this universe still exists.
Yes.
Whereas the Iron Man one was like you said, huge. Avengers is happening. All these people are about to
Yeah.
come into existence, but it wasn't specific. Like we really don't know what's going to happen in Avengers 2. You know what I mean? Are we gonna like are the Scarlet Witch supposed to be in the after credit scenes? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was just. I think it was a cool
And then
little
you
thing.
mean in this Iron Man?
And the
after
newest
credits.
one, yeah. Well, like I wasn't expecting anything.
Well, I think a lot of
mind-blowing.
people were commenting, this would have been an interesting point to introduce something Guardians of the Galaxy related, because
Especially
a raccoon attacks Tony
No,
Stark.
no, just maybe with all the anxiety that Tony has had about these kind of interdimensional demons, if you will.
yeah, he goes into space.
Maybe that he's
Doctor Strange shows up and listens to his problems.
I was hoping Doctor Strange would be the person he was talking to. I wanted that more than
That would have been
anything.
really cool, actually.
Yeah, that
Even
would
though
have been
I'm
about the best thing
It
ever.
was a
But
funny
interesting.
scene. I enjoyed it. And anytime I can see, Mark Ruffalo, they had such a great rapport in the
Yeah.
Avengers. It
Yep.
was cool to see that again.
I
So-
think that was their way of saying yes, this is happening in the Avengers universe, and
Yeah.
yes, Avengers 2 is happening. And
Well, at the same time,
it was not a satisfactory way to infiltrate it. They really should have had more in with that. But I mean, I think that's probably what they were doing. They were just kind of saying, yeah, yes, this universe is still going on.
And honestly, I don't see any after credit scene ever topping Samuel Jackson, Nick Fury showing. Like,
that's the greatest after credit
Right.
scene of all time. All right, that's gonna about wrap it up for our thoughts on Iron Man 3. But as final thoughts, let's each give it a rating on the epic rating scale, guys. Starting with Gina, what would you rate Iron Man 3?
Great.
Andrew,
great.
Jerry,
Great.
I'm gonna say great.
and I
Crap.
went.
Rad.
I went from a good and a half to a great. I will confirm.
As
so-
have I.
As is Jerry. So we're going to confirm Iron Man 3 at a great. As always, you can find all of our work at thepicreview.com. You can find Jerry's work where?
On Flickr, check my Flickr account out at www.flickr.com/photos/barbecue17.
And if that doesn't work, you can always look at my Xbox.
Where Andrew's
Yeah.
photos show up
Inside joke.
magically.
Gina, where can we find more of your stuff this week?
It'll be on the website, of course, and you can follow me at Twitter at Jeanerbeaner.
And if we want to get updates on the life and times of Andrew Stokes, where can we find some of your stuff this week?
You can find me at myspace.com/Panthers. But if that doesn't work, you can follow me on Twitter at ChristJuggernaut, or when I post an article on the website, you can celebrate and leave comments because it's a magical time.
What about you, Kristen?
You can follow me on Twitter. I am Arathalia.
And of course, you can find my work at TH Epic Review. You can follow me on Twitter at The Real Brad Bell, REEL Brad Bell. Like us on Facebook for breaking epic news daily, and email any question, comments, not comics, that would be too cool too, our concerns to thepicreview@gmail.com. And until next time, we are out.
Intruder.
You think you're the only one out there?
Blew
his house with a blue little window and a blue Corvette, and everything is blue for him, himself, and everybody around, 'cause he ain't got nobody to listen to. I'm blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-die, 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 da-ba-dee-da-ba-die. Are they still listening?